Hello snowboarders of the internet, I am your host TC, and today I will be reviewing the Jones Tweaker. This board is equipped with Jones Snowboard's medium traditional camber, so what that means is it's that classic camber that you grew up with if you're that older crowd, that sort of thing, where from contact point to contact point you have that whole camber for pop, power, and stability. The Tweaker comes in a 146, a 149, a 151, a 154, 156, 157 wide, 159, 160 wide, and a 162. I rode this board at Copper Mountain where it started off as an overcast day, but don't let that fool you, it wasn't very flat light, so you could see the definition in the snow, which was firmer in the morning but eventually softened up as the day went on, and the sun kept trying to poke out. Eventually it did for a few laps, but really didn't stay too long. It did get to that softer snow though towards the end of the day where it wasn't quite mashed potatoes but more of that cream cheese texture. I used my Ride Fuse boots and Jones Mercury bindings. When we're talking flex on this board, it's coming in at just a shade over the middle of the road, I would say, when we're talking stiffness there, where it's actually a little bit softer in between the feet than it is outside of the feet. Just because of how much core milling is actually in this board, it's a little softer there. So when you do go to foot steer this thing, it's a lot easier to foot steer than you'd expect, especially when you're pressing into the nose or the tail. You're gonna feel a little bit of stiffness there, but this board really wants to flex right in the middle. And when we translate that into stability, it is a fairly stable board on groomers. You can really point it, not really feel a top speed on it. When you do get into those chunder piles or those wet push piles, if you go over it, it kind of wants to skip over, kind of pop out, that sort of thing. When you're trying to weave right through them, it gets bounced around a little. So stay low on it and you'll be just fine. It is nice and stable, but in those bigger conditions, just keep that in mind. When you're loading this thing up to ollie, you will feel that that tail is stiffer. And I mean, if you go for an ollie, you'll feel the same thing, where this board does flex in the middle, where this kind of becomes nice and snappy at the tail there. Just because there is no rocker, you really feel that full camber when you're loading it up. And the same goes for when landing. It is nice and stable, where it's not trying to sink in, since the nose and the tail are a little bit wider. It doesn't really want to sink into that soft snow. It just goes nice and flat and keeps tracking straight. And the same goes for off of jumps. If you land on a jump with less than ideal conditions, a little bit of bomb hole, that sort of thing, it'll do the same thing. You can just push right through and keep going. Now when you're taking off the jumps, you could either pop it or let the lip do the work. I prefer to let the lip do the work, and this thing's got spring to it. It'll let you spin off of it, where the tail grips really well when you're going to spin. It doesn't get washy on you or anything like that. If you over rotate a little bit, it'll let you just set that edge and not keep spinning. Remember to like, subscribe, click that bell, and turn on those notifications so you're not missing any of the programming we have coming out. When you go to throw this board into a butter, whether that be on the tail or the nose, you do notice it flexes in the middle a lot more and then mellows out as it goes pretty much. So you have a lot of surface area to work with on the tail and the nose, but you are going to feel some resistance when you do go to throw that press. That being said, you don't have to really lean all the way back and really press into the board. It'll help you out with that. It'll even give you a little pop on the way out. So buttering, it's not a total fight, but you are going to feel some resistance. And the same goes for when you're jibbing on this thing. When you're tail pressing or nose pressing, you're going to feel that resistance. It's going to want to spring you out. So just be careful and be a little bit more sure of your riding. Come in with speed for sure. I definitely had more luck just because of how aggressive this board is with that full camber. You're going to want to come into it with speed. Now that being said, when you do go to board slide this thing, because of that core milling in the middle, it does allow this board to really cradle that rail nice for you, where it just holds on. It doesn't really want to slide one way or another. It just gripped right in the middle. This board will make any sort of carve for you as long as that run is nice and smooth. Those short, quick carves, you can just weave right through mogul fields. As long as your knees are bent, stay low, you'll be fine. When you get to those medium and larger carves, especially on those groomers, it feels great. If it's a little bit bouncy out there, you're gonna feel it a little bit more, but it still holds its edge pretty well. And it will Euro carve as long as you don't get too toe heavy or heel heavy, but you know, as long as you keep that weight centered and really press into it, this board is gonna hold that edge for you and you'll make it all the way around. rider in mind. The tweaker is made for somebody that is that intermediate to advanced park rider. They might venture out into the wild a little bit and just hit side hits, maybe rip some groomers up, but they're mainly focused in the park. They're taking every feature with speed, and they're fairly confident in their riding, and the board is going to reflect that for them. If you're looking for another way to get involved in the community, head on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP. What is it, you ask? I could explain it here, but we have a great video over there getting to it really in depth. I honestly really like this board. It did catch me off guard. It was more aggressive than I expected, where this thing did hold an edge like a dream. Like, I didn't really think it was a twin tip board with how well it actually carves, but it does. I expected it to be a little softer on the nose and the tail, but you know, it is what it is, and I understand why it's stiff there, because if it wasn't, this board would probably not be as fun to ride. But overall, it's a really fun board. If you're looking for that park board, I would highly recommend it. Comparable boards: the Rossignol Retox, the Arbor metal machine, and the Salomon Huck knife. Recommended bindings: the Jones Meteorite, the Union Force, and the Yes Uninc. This has been my review of the Jones Tweaker. If you're still not totally sold on this board, why don't you go check out one of the videos for the comparable boards.